So that was 14 minutes clinically dead. And it says it in here. So in this, I'll just quickly show you this. This is all my medical files, ECGs, medical notes, everything from my hospital that I've now got that proves this event actually happened. There's the bathroom where I passed out and died. And I found myself floating here in the lounge room in this corner near this chair. Here's some of my x-rays, Queensland Diagnostics Imaging. So here's all my scan results, MRI results. I believe thoroughly that I was chosen to have this experience because I've got the gift of the gap. I love talking, and they know that, the universe knows that. So of course they're going to give me this experience, such in depth. I even spoke to Dr. Raymond Moody, who penned the term near-death experience. And he said that my experience was one of the most in-depth experiences he ever heard of. So on that note, what happened? I'm just an average person. I have struggles, bills like everybody else on the planet. There was nothing special about me, except for the fact that I've always been a psychic. I've always had that knowing of things. So you walk into someone's house and you know they've got a blue bathroom, or you know their cat is a black-haired cat. So I've always had that, but I never really entertained the thought of it. So I was on to my second marriage. Hello, I've been struggling myself. We've all go through stuff. And I moved over to America to marry my second husband. So I was there for about 8 months married to him, and we had a lot of trouble. He was abusing me every day. He was hiding stuff from me, having locked doors so I couldn't go into certain rooms of the house. So I don't like talking about much of what happened that night because it was criminal, because the sheriff got involved, etc. However, I do like talking about what happened to me. So here we go. And I've got drawings. Now, one of the things that I do have is my book. Where did I put my book? Here it is. I've got a book. It's called 5 Years in Heaven by me. And this picture is one of my drawings that I personally drew. So you're going to hear about what happened when I'm standing in front of those as well. So in my book, I start with who is she? Because she is always with me. And she was the one, it was like she was guiding me through heaven. So what happened was May 6th, 2001. So it was 27 years ago now. I went to bed and I was extremely stressed. And I also had like a stress ball, as I put it as. We get sick when we get stressed, right? I got up about 2 o'clock in the morning, I could not breathe, and I knew that I had to go to the toilet. So I got up and I walked past the clothes closet and I went into the toilet area. And the next thing I know, I'm floating in the living room. I did not know at this point that I was actually physically dead. I was actually clinically dead for over 14 minutes. So what happened is my ex-husband, he's my ex-husband now, he heard someone banging on the wall and it woke him up. Now, I know it wasn't me because I went to sleep because I couldn't breathe, and then I'm floating next to the living room. So I believe it was her, my guardian angel, or whoever you want to call it. So I talk about her in my book. So here is a diagram of where I was. There's my bedroom. There's the bathroom where I passed out and died. And I found myself floating here in the lounge room in this corner near this chair opposite the TV. So this is the front door into the house. And as I'm floating here, rushed in 2 paramedics. They go straight past me into the bedroom where I didn't even know my dead body was. So I'm just floating up near the ceiling, looking down on what's going on in the house. A sheriff arrived with two other people. Even the fire department turned up. They're all in this living room. Now, this is a basic diagram, but there were other chairs in here as well. So I saw what the sheriff did during this point. He had with him a clipboard that he was writing on, and he also had one of those, like one of those flip over notebooks with the spiral on the top. He had one of those, and he was writing stuff in that as well. So that's important that I saw all that, because after I woke up, I told him about it and he confirmed everything I saw was real. So there's one of those things that proves this really happened, that I was really there. So I watched the sheriff, which chair he sat in. He actually had a limp. So I explained to him that he had that limp. He had a very tight shirt on and one of his buttons was popped. So it was undone. I don't think he noticed it. But I explained to him that one of his buttons was undone. And he said, "How did you know that? Because I never went into where your body was. So how could you possibly see me?" Now, this is a sheriff with that integrity and professionalism of his career. So he's to be trusted, okay? So I'm floating there. I watched the paramedics, the fire department, the sheriff, and all these other people in the house. And then two more paramedics turned up, which I've now find out are the advanced life crew, the ALS, the advanced life support people. They turned up. They had really big boxers with them, like defibrillators and other stuff. They ran into the house. So I'm just watching and observing very peacefully. And then they brought me out on a gurney. They took the gurney in with all the equipment and they bring me out. And when I looked down at me, it was no longer me. It was her, because I was floating. And I was looking at this woman who was me, but it was now separate to me. And I thought, man, what have they done to her hair? Because all my hair, it looked like it had hair gel or oil in it. And that's one of those commonalities that a lot of other people say, by the way, when they see their own dead body. So I had an oxygen mask on and they wheeled me, because it wasn't me at this point, they wheeled me out of the house. So at this point, before we go into what happened in heaven, I want to explain something. I've now got my medical files, which is here from the Cabarrus County Hospital, which is now called the Northwest Medical Center in North Carolina. Obviously, I've taken out my name, etc., because it's private information. But here in my medical files, it says that when my ex-husband dialed 911, he found me lifeless and blue. So I was already dead when he found me, because remember, he heard the knocks to wake him up. When the first paramedics came in, they were only doing CPR. But it was when the second crew arrived, they used the defib and got my heart rate going again. And it was from the time of 911 phone call until the defib found a heartbeat. So that was 14 minutes clinically dead. And it says it in here. So in this, I'll just quickly show you this. This is all my medical files, ECGs, medical notes, everything from my hospital that I've now got that proves this event actually happened, okay? From the Northwest Medical Center in North Carolina, Concord. So there's my medical records, because people like to hear that this actually happened. So they all left. I was still floating in the living room. And everybody left, and my ex-husband actually left too, because he was going with me in the ambulance. Then it got weird. The door opened. Now, how does a door open when it's already locked? I don't know. But in came all these blue orbs. They were floating, and they were like a deep blue, like a royal blue color. Some of them are little, some of them are quite large. And they all started hovering around me, and they were intelligent. And when I looked at them inside, they had pure white lights and they had energy coming out of them. So that's why I drew this picture with all these little lines on it. So these things are hovering around me and they're all like doing this with their energy as they're going around me, like little sparklers. But they were intelligent because they didn't bump into each other and they were all moving around each other. So it was intelligent, but they didn't communicate with me at all. But I wasn't scared of them. It was so peaceful, this whole event. There was no fear on my behalf at all. So I was watching these things for a few minutes, and then it was like they all got told to get out because they were all moving around. They stopped and they all went out through the front door. And I was thinking, where did they go? So I was thinking at this point too, where did they go? How did the door open? Because as soon as they went out the door shut again. How does that work? When physically my ex-husband already locked the door when he left. So then I get this tap on my shoulder, and it's her because I know her voice because she's been with me a lot of times through my life. I entered what I call the fog stage. It's almost like you blink and you wake up and you're in a totally foreign country, but you don't remember moving and there's no teleportation movement. So you just wake up and you're there. And I find myself in that field of flowers that a lot of people talk about. It's almost like there's an X on the ground and Scotty says, beam me down, Scotty, from Star Trek. Okay. So I'm in this field of flowers and I look down and I've now got feet. So as I try to walk, the flowers moved. They knew that even knowing here I was an energetic being without a body, they knew to move because they knew that I thought I had feet. So they knew what I was thinking. As I looked around these flowers, and here's one of my drawings because they're not like Earth, the petals had energy coming out of the end of them. It was like a little spark. The colors, I can't explain them here on Earth because we don't have the colors. We only see 5% of colors on Earth. So I can't explain the flowers. I can't explain the colors. And I also can't explain the music that was constantly everywhere at this point. But it was like a tribal drumming. Dum, 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 dum. When I close my eyes at night, I can still hear the music, but I can't play it on any instrument because we don't have the instruments here that create that sort of noise. So it's very frustrating for me to explain this to people. So as I'm looking around where I am from this field of flowers, I noticed that there was mountain, like hills, then mountain ranges. We're talking rock formations that are 100 times bigger than Mount Everest. Over way, way, way in the distance, I saw a city because the skyscrapers were like this big in the distance. So it was a long way away. So people say to me, how do I explain that I was there for 5 years when time does not exist? I generally walk about 4 kilometers an hour. So let's say 5 kilometers an hour I walk. So typically, if I walk four hours, that's 20 kilometers, okay? Or I'll make it miles, right? 5 miles. So 4 hours is 20 miles. I walked thousands of miles. I walked down through the mountains. I walked down through the streams. I walked over near where there's another big lake. I walked all through that big city. And at no point did I just say, I'm there, because I didn't realize at this point I could create that. And it was when I was on the mountains, when I'm looking up thinking, wow, how do I get to the top? Instantly, because I was thinking about the top of the mountain, I was now on the top of the mountain looking down. Oh my God, that's a long way. Because it's so high compared to what we have here on this planet. And I realized that what we think, we create. So when I was walking through the city and I was thinking, wow, I'd like to be at the top of that high-rise building, boom, I was there. There's stairs if you want to go the slow way and walk up the stair, but there's no elevators. There's no technology there at all. But I will tell you what I did get quite amazed with is the clothes. Because some people were like in caveman clothes, other people were in medieval clothes. Then we've got like I watched one lady, she was a medieval lady, and instantly she turned into a 1960s hippie. So what we think, we create again. So we don't need technology. We don't eat, we don't sleep. So even though there's houses there, we don't have to cook food or go to the bathrooms. So it's only like an area where we seclude ourselves so others don't really interact with us. And I interacted with thousands of people there. And it's not like what we talk about here. Hey, how's the weather? What's the politics like? Weather politics, sports people. We don't talk about any of that because everything is love. And we're talking about being positive and smiling, laughing, making happy thoughts. That's what people talk about in heaven because there's no sadness, no trauma. And most of all, we don't have to worry about anything because there's no stress, there's no bills, we don't have money. So I now do YouTube channels. I've got a YouTube channel where I talk about things like why are there chairs in heaven? What's the music like? Other educational videos so people can watch them. So I break it all down because obviously 5 years is a long time to talk about it. So I'm in this place for probably 18 odd months I base it on how far I walked. So I try to make a time out of it. And then I get this tap on the shoulder. Her again. And it's like I'm back in the fog stage. And when I come out of it, I'm standing in front of this huge cathedral and the doors open and it's a very long corridor. The walls are made out of timber and sandstone, but it's melded together. Like I know how to meld, which is a medieval technique before welding came in. So I know how to do that sort of architectural design work. And we're talking trees that would have been 300 feet long, the plank, and 16 feet wide. We have 5x2s and 3x4 planks of wood here, but these pieces of wood were so enormous. So imagine the trees that were used for this. So I'm walking down and there's all these long pews, like seats. And when I get to the front is when I saw these three at the front. So I walked in and here's these big three. They weren't materialistic. They weren't physical. They were energy. And as I looked at them, it was energy going up like a reverse waterfall. And when it got to what I call the head area, not only did it swirl left to right, but it also swirled right to left. So it was like this sort of effect. And all the energy was coming up them. And in front of them, there was this box. And the box had all this energy coming out of it. So there's me wearing my pajamas because I was still in my pajamas at this point. Thank God I didn't sleep naked. That's what I say. I had clothes on, thank goodness. But I'm in there in my pajamas and I'm in front of this box. And I heard telepathically, not through my ears, I heard inside my head, and it sounded like a male. And it said, "We are not here to judge." Instantly, I had no fear again, but I knew that I had to open the box and judge all my own memories of what my actions were. So when I looked inside this box, I took the lid off. There was no walls and no floor. It was eternity inside this box. Like Doctor Who's TARDIS. When you walk in, it's everywhere. And inside were all these little round bubbles like orbs, and they all had little videos inside them of my actions. So I had to pick one out. And as I'm holding this orb, I had to A, reassess what I did in that scene, B, reassess the other person or being, because sometimes it was an animal inside that. And then I had to judge the whole thing and heal it. So here's one of my pictures. It's in my book. Me, there's my hand. I'm holding this orb of energy. And the memory was me as a baby pulling the cat's tail of my grandmother's cat. So in this scene, I knew it was wrong because my mum had told me previously, don't pull the cat's tail. But I pulled it anyway, knowing it was wrong. So as I'm watching this scene of me pulling the cat's tail, and I'm sitting there thinking, Lynda, this is wrong. Don't do it. Don't do it. But then I had to watch it and I'm like, oh, she did it anyway. And then I had to become me. So here I am now as a baby and I can feel the the grass under me because I'm sitting on the front lawn. I can feel that I'm wearing a nappy because I'm only like 15 months old, 18 months old. I can see the white cat in front of me because it's huge because of my size now as a child. And I'm giggling at myself. And inside my head, I think, pull that thing, pull like the tail, because I didn't know it was called a tail. So I became me. But then I also became the cat. And now I've got fur. I've got 4 legs. I've got ears. And I'm feeling my whiskers and I can sense what cats sense through when they know that there's a insect in the bush, in the grass. So my whiskers were twitching. And then I feel this pain, and it's tenfold the pain of someone, this little girl, Lynda, pulling my tail. And it was excruciatingly painful all the way up my spine. So I come back out of that to where I'm now holding the memory, and I'm thinking, wow, how bad was that? And then I've got the tears streaming down my face. Water is everywhere, all over the floor in this church. And I'm thinking, my God, what did I do to that cat? I'm so sorry. So we go through a healing process where we have to analyze why we did something, why we're not going to do it again, and how to heal that energy, which is our emotions. Emotions create energy. So some of the memories that I cured in this or healed in this process, sometimes I was extremely angry. Anger. And I realized anger is one of the most easiest emotions to create because it's one of our negative, lowered vibrational states, whereby we create an energy that emits out of us like a pheromone or a chemical that we emit, and other people attach to that energy force as well. So here we are again with what we emit, our emotional state or energy. We create what we put out. So I realize that when we're angry, we're creating things to go wrong in our lives. Why does my car break down the same week my computer died? How does it work? Because my emotional state that week was also very negative. And that only happened about 4 months ago, by the way. My car broke down and my computer died in the same week. And I look at where I was energetically, and I wasn't in a good state either. So we create the energy around us. And that's what I learned in this, what is called the life review. So I'm doing thousands of these memories. So I say I'm there for a year, 18 months, I don't know. But then I get the tap on the shoulder again. And I close my eyes, and now when I woke up, everything's white. There's no floors, walls, no ceiling. Everything is white. And way over in the distance, there's a woman. She's only little off in the distance. And as she walks towards me, she's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And she's wearing a brown dress. She's got long hair. And she comes up to me and she says, "What are you doing here?" I thought, what am I doing here? I don't know. Where am I? And she starts going, oh, God. She calms down and she says, "I'm Karina. I am your great, 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 great grandmother." And she starts telling me all about her life back in the 1820s. Now, I never even knew her name. I know my grandmother's name. I know my grandmother's mother's name, but I don't know any of my father's or my other grandparents' parents. So I had no idea who this woman was. She spent the extremely long time telling me how to make an axe. She told me about where they built their house up north in Queensland. She told me the address. She told me birth dates, death dates. She told me where people were buried. She told me how to make clothes without sewing kits because back then they didn't have Target or Myers or Sears. So there was no shops. JC Penney's didn't exist 100, 200 years ago. So she told me all this stuff about herself first. And I think she told me all that so I could confirm it. So after I woke up, I did check her out. I researched her. Thank God we now have Google. So, and I found her. I found other relatives. I found the address that she told me. And it's real. There was a house there. And it was where my relatives lived 200 years ago. So now I get goosebumps again because it's so amazing. But then she started telling me all about my life. So I died in 2001. She said, Lynda, you must return to the place from where you are from, because she spoke in old school 200 years ago. They didn't speak like us now. And I came from Australia, so I knew I had to go back to Australia. She said, you must return to where you're from, because if you stay past August, there is an event coming which everyone will watch from all lands. 2 buildings will collapse. Everyone will judge, and you will be rounded up because you're an illegal immigrant and you will be deported. Don't let that happen. So you must leave before this happens. So she was talking about 9/11, which was September 2001, because I died in May 2001. So I had like 3 months to get out of Australia. And then she said, you will work with the police for 10 years, which I did from 2002 to 2012. She said, you'll leave there because of your mental state, which I did. I've got PTSD from crime scene stuff that I saw. She said, you'll be a first aid trainer for 2 years. And I was. January 15 until January 2017. So it was exactly 2 years I was a first aid trainer. She said, here is a date. Please don't remember this. Don't forget this date. And the date was in 2005. 4 years away. She said, you must remember this date because that is the date you conceived your daughter. How did she know this stuff? Don't know, but remember, time does not exist. So my daughter was born in 2006 because I remembered the date. So my daughter is now 18 years old. So she told me a lot of things about myself. But she also told me about natural disasters, earthquakes. She told me about the tsunami where 500,000 people will die. She told me about the volcano on Hawaii. And she said, you will watch this every day on the device where you watch. So because she didn't know internet. So I was watching that Hawaii earthquake about 4 years ago every day. And she said, it will create 3 miles of new land. And that that volcano did create 3 miles of new land. She told me about the vaccinations. She told me about COVID. She told me about the lies and the deceit of all the government. So then she started talking about government, the big economic crash that's coming, the possible war that's coming this year that could still arise. So hopefully not. But she told me all this stuff. So how long was I with her? Probably, I don't know, 18 months again. So there's my 5 years that I talk about. And then she said, you must go back. You can't stay here because if you stay here, you go into this tunnel. So then she showed me this tunnel. So here's me, no walls again, no floors, no ceiling. And she told me all about the reincarnation tunnel. And I wanted to go in that tunnel so bad. It was like a magnetic attraction. I wanted to go in there. It was like dragging me in. And she said, "You can't go in there because if you go in there, you never return to who you were." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, how do I get back to who I was?" And she said, "You think about where you are from and you will return." So this is where I look at movies. I don't know if you remember Wizard of Oz with Judy Garland. How did she get out of this dream state? Is where the witch said to her, "You remember where you were from and you will go back there." So they knew something in that movie. Yeah. So there I was in this white space, and I started thinking about the house that I lived in. I started thinking about my husband at the time. And then I woke up in hospital. I'm in ICU and I can feel the blood pressure cuff tightening on my arm, which hurt, by the way, because I haven't had pain for 5 years. They're pulling the tube because I'd been intubated. Were pulling the ICU tubes out of my throat, and because I'm so short-sighted, I could see it very clearly, which wasn't a good sight, by the way. And there's a nurse there saying, "Lynda, if you hear me, squeeze my hand." So I'm squeezing my hand. And she said, "I can feel it. I can feel it. She's here. She's awake." So from the get-go of waking up, my psychic abilities were so in tune. Everything was one, like in heaven. I knew radio stations were going through my head, like 200 radio stations at once, because I could hear voices coming from China. I could hear what song they were playing in Berlin. I could hear Australian waves coming through. I knew what was on the TV before I turned on TV. I knew the phone would ring, which still happens to me. I walk to my phone and just as I pick it up, it rings. So that's something I do all the time. I've now been upgraded and now I see spirit guides. I see auras around people. So I've got a lot of psychic abilities, which I put back to how long I was there because I'm still in tune in that frequency of heaven where we're in that high vibrational state. So what a lot of people don't realize, we do have life contracts. We assign things to ourselves. So did I assign this event to myself? You bet I did. Because now I'm talking about it to educate and teach other people. Don't be fearful of what is out there because we are eternal souls. One thing that I do love telling people is I have had a broken neck, I've had a brain tumor, and I've had throat cancer. I have cured all three of those. I'm not a quadriplegic. My bones in my neck are still broken. C2, C3 are not connected in my neck. I should be a quadriplegic. So I self-healed. How do I teach others how to do this now is one of those things that I love doing. How to keep our vibrations high because all these illnesses and injuries cannot exist when we raise our vibration. So unless we know how to do it, we're going to stay in low vibrations. So that's why the second half of my book is called The Teachings of Heaven. It's techniques, exercises, how to self-heal, how to create abundance, how to win this war that we're in at this point. So I like showing medical files. I've got all my x-rays, got them here, ready to go. Here's some of my x-rays, Queensland Diagnostics Imaging. So here's all my scan results, MRI results that shows I've got brain tumor. I had a brain tumor. I had throat cancer. Look, no surgery. I haven't got a scar. There's no scars in my head from where I had a brain tumor removed. But it's all been diagnosed through professionals and I've cured all my diseases. So I hope, if there's a message that I send out there to people, Dylan, I hope people start being the best version of themselves now while we're alive. Don't wait until we're standing here and having to judge ourselves for what we've done, because that's too late. We've all got choices and free will to be the person who we want to be. And I hope and pray every day that my story, my experiences, and my education brings out the best in everybody. That's what I do, Dylan. So there's my story. Thanks for listening.
All right, thanks for watching part 1. Now go check out part 2 where we dive deeper, asking questions specifically about what Dr. Lynda Cramer saw on the other side, as well as learning some more lessons that we can implement into our lives today in 2024. You don't want to miss it. Go check it out. Thanks.